Hi, my name is Daria and welcome to Politeka World Show. And today we have a guest, a political scientist, Maxim Yali. Maxim, I'm happy to have you here.
Me too. You're welcome.
So let's start from the last news from the front line about Ukraine. There are a lot of hot news about Solidar, and every expert now concentrated on this. So how do you feel, how important now this point on the front line and how it could influence the next developments around the war in Ukraine?
Well, I'm not a military expert, but definitely...
But you wrote a lot about it.
First of all, I read a lot about it. Those who have knowledge here in that sphere, from strategical point of view. So my conclusion is that, even if we take the worst variant, if Ukrainian armed forces will have to leave that tiny town, because, you know, when everything is ruined, like it used to be already last spring and at the beginning of summer in Lysychansk, Severodonetsk, when everything is ruined, there is nowhere to hide, so there is no reason to stay there. Moreover, and the most important is that from strategical point of view, if we take into account the development in Donetsk region, in Donbass particularly, it doesn't have any serious meaning from strategical point of view. So even if we leave it, it's not a tragedy. Definitely, yes, somehow it will help. It will help Russian troops, Wagner, because, you know, only Wagner they
were able to
it will let them just help to surround encircle Bakhmut. But even I read a lot about, like, even the worst variant, which is, at the moment the chances are not so high. Even if we leave Bakhmut, definitely it doesn't also have strategic meaning, because the biggest and the most important line of defense of Ukrainian armed forces in Donetsk region is agglomeration Kramatorsk and Slaviansk. And it is very well fortified, just as well actually as Bakhmut is, as you know, since summer. Russian troops, regular armed forces, then Wagner are trying to capture it, to besiege it, etc., but they fail. As the head of Wagner, Prigozhin, mentioned recently himself, there are about 500 lines of defense, as he mentioned. Every house, building is a fortress, and therefore they are failing to do it. So actually there is much more about not military aspect, but symbolism. First of all, for Russians, because they are
shows a victory somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, because, as you know, last victories results they had at the beginning of July. If I'm not mistaken, it was just Severodonetsk, Lysychansk agglomeration, when they managed to ruin the logistic, and our heroes had to leave, not to lose more people, because it was, supply is very important. So the same as I mentioned, for Russians, it's very important to show some results, because first year anniversary of so-called special military operation is coming, and definitely Putin needs results. And if we take latest news, just
but a tiny town, is it a result? What do you make of it?
You know, for Russians,
they don't understand what
you should take into account that these people who are watching federal channels. They don't give a shit, so to say. They don't understand at all what is it about. They cannot, most of them cannot even use internet. They may not Google and understand that before full-scale war there were only 10,000 inhabitants in Solidar. We talk about Bakhmut, 70,000, for example. They left Kherson. It used to be 300, 350. So for you to understand the difference, what they lost and what they're trying to get. Yes, now there are, if I'm not mistaken, just maybe 2,000 of civilians. So definitely everything is ruined. So as I mentioned, symbolism, because for several months already, especially last weeks, this is top news in Russian media, Telegram channel, military correspondence, etc., writing only about it. So I'm following the narratives, and just for them, they are, exaggerated, excited, and they want to get something. So that's why actually they switched from Bakhmut, because they failed to capture it, to Solidar, because Solidar is much smaller and easier to get. Especially we should take into account how many soldiers, these prisoners, they are throwing there as cannon meat, and just don't care about losses. So just to get some results. Plus, for Prigozhin personally, yes, it will be a good benefit.
About benefits. What do you feel about such version that after, if Wagner Group capture the Solidar, so Putin will decide to send his military army for the spring campaign just against Kiev? And what do you feel about such version?
Absolutely. Well, never say never, so to say. I can't get into Putin's head.
Could it be they connected things?
Definitely not. So we should, as I started, we should also take into account that Putin is not satisfied as well with Prigozhin, because, as you know, Surovikin, who used to be the head of this so-called special military operation, if we talk about in terms of Russian propaganda, he was dismissed. Now Gerasimov, he was substituted by Gerasimov by the head of staff headquarters. And so we see that Surovikin is just like political intrigues inside the surroundings and military, as you know, Kadyrov plus Prigozhin, they were opposing Gerasimov, just condemning him in all failures. But then they were just fans of Surovikin, they applauded him, just praised him. Now we see that Prigozhin also promised, and as we can see, even Bakhmut, it is becoming clear, will not be captured until the 24th. So it's definitely a deadline. So we can see no results, and these substitutes also show and prove negative attitude of Putin, that both Surovikin and Prigozhin failed to realize their promises.
But nevertheless, there are bloody fights between Ukrainian army and Russian army right now around Solidar. So how do you feel from this logistic point? Could it be more difficult for Ukrainian army to provide the military stuff if Solidar will be captured?
If we talk about Bakhmut, definitely, because it's close to it. There is one important road across it. So
and Solidar?
Nearby. So it's just close to Bakhmut.
Yes.
So it's like from one more side there will be Russian troops. So definitely, as I told you, but still there are some places we are still controlled by Ukrainian armed forces. We still have supply, so definitely it will cause some problems to logistics as well, but not crucial one.
Not crucial, yeah. So there is one more new information about counteroffensive from different parts of the war, from Ukrainian army and from Russian army. So now military experts told us that there are any points where Russian army could start counteroffensive, and the same is about Ukrainian army. The reason is the weather. So who do we expect for counteroffensive in near 2-3 weeks?
Well, actually, we are now facing it. If we talk about Solidarity, it started just a few weeks ago, yeah. So definitely, Russians decided to attack the first, and not to wait until we mobilize the resources, get the necessary equipment, weapons, etc., etc. So definitely, the main battle for not only for Donbass but in general in other territories in the south, particularly, still to come, and we see already during the last 2 weeks a lot of good news about decisions of US, France, Germany to give us armored vehicles, so much needed, like tanks, as they call it, if we talk about France. So we are all looking forward to Ramstein next meeting, the 20th of January, where quite possible, I hope so, let's keep our fingers crossed, there will be made a decision to start supplying us with heavy tanks. Leopard, for example, well, there are a lot of such news rumors around it. Well, Great Britain probably will give us some, well, probably Poland. Of course, there are concerns. Nobody wants to be the first one if we talk about European states, if we talk about Germany.
I think Poland would like to be a leader, or sometimes France would like to take first.
Well, they did, and it was already a breakthrough. So therefore, I suppose, it's not heavy tank, definitely, what they're going to give it, but still it's much better than... so from those examples and kind of weapons, vehicles we have already received, it's the heaviest one, I would say, and it's very close modification of a tank, if to explain it in the easiest words, right? So I guess it was already a breakthrough, and very soon there gonna be a lot of good news concerning it, and definitely Russia also realizes it. Therefore, they decided not to wait. Plus, temperature, as you know, minus, so heavy weather conditions for both sides, if we talk about infantry, right? So we'll see. But as I have mentioned, and today the head of Secretary of Defense Council, yes, Mr. Danilov mentioned that the most important events are still to come, and they're going to take place in the coming 3-4 months. So to my analysis, it just coincides, which I mentioned before, because, well, okay, what we need to take into account. From the last 2 weeks, there were some decisions, right, made, new packages of military support. So there is some time from the point of view of logistics for them to send it, especially if we talk about US, different procedures, bureaucratical as well, if we talk about especially Europe. Then if there are new examples like Bradley, or just there were new examples of armored vehicles. Yes, so our soldiers needed to be trained to use it. I'm not talking about tanks, so it's definitely it will take more time. And to prepare everything, then weather conditions. So from my point of view, it's just if we talk about Ukrainian counteroffensive, it's gonna be already much rather second half. And the most interesting and furious, I would say, fights, battles will take place already in April.
Yeah, but before European and Western countries, they were afraid of supply to Ukraine such equipment, tanks, and so on. So the main reason, as I know, it was told about possible escalation. So after all this supply of important things, military stuff to Ukraine, what would be the reaction, in your point of view, by Russia? So could we expect more touristic attacks around, for example, our city Kyiv or around somewhere else? So how do you feel? Could maybe Russia make any other decisions?
You see, they're also preparing. Their training, so I don't think you asked me about Kiev. Yeah, so still their lack of resources, their lack of people. If we talk about just groupings there, which are trained, etc., etc. So still, but 150,000 of newly mobilized soldiers in autumn are being trained now, and definitely are being prepared. Definitely they are being prepared for fights. So what we see, I rather think so. Number one goal of Russia and Putin now to occupy completely Donbass, right? So it's
Yes.
number one. So without it, because
For sure.
it sounds like it's just one can laugh at when they say, okay, we're next for new regions. None of them we control completely. Even Lugansk region, which they managed to occupy completely by summer, as you know, during counteroffensive in autumn by Ukrainian armed forces, some territories were deoccupied. So definitely for them to, as they think, so the goal is to occupy all 4 territories completely, and these people are prepared. So definitely, so the possible variants, just Donbass, it's obvious, even after, as I mentioned, we take the worst variant for Ukraine. Bakhmut falls, not talking about Solidar, then Kramatorsk, Slaviansk, but still it's the pretty big cities, towns, okay, just less than 500,000.
Yes,
Even
yes.
Kramatorsk used to be 300,000, yeah, but still a big agglomeration, very well fortified. And definitely it will take a lot of time if just taken into account like Bakhmut, yeah, so for half a year almost they are trying to capture it and they are failing. 70,000 people. So Kramatorsk, as I mentioned, like 5 times more. And there are more enterprises, etc., etc. But I guess south, Zaporizhia, they lack, of course, because like to annex region not controlling its administrative center, like a population of which is bigger than all the rest territories which they managed to occupy. So I guess Donbass plus South are the most important and the places where serious fights and battles are going to take place.
But Russia plans to mobilize 500,000 plus.
Rumors.
No, you don't believe about it?
So fights,
They have enough cannon fodder, just even more.
No, definitely they will. There gonna be a new wave of mobilization because definitely when these 300,000, half of which is already on the battlefields, right? I guess at least 1/3 of which is utilized already by Ukrainian armed forces, they will need more new waves. So, but how many, when it will take place, so far it's impossible to guess. Yes, there are a lot of rumors because they are not confirmed. Yeah, that's why there are rumors. There's lots of such news that like it's about to start. But we take into account that if Russia, Putin, Prigozhin, his puppets, whatever, Gerasimov, don't show any serious results, Solidar is not a serious result, yeah, then they're
It's
going
how
to
to
be
present it.
okay, 300, you said just there won't be any new wave, yeah, because Putin many times repeated it. These questions have been asked, not only to him, and then, okay, sorry, well, I guess this mobilization is going on, but in other ways, as I mentioned, like prisoners for Prigozhin, like this cannon meat, etc., etc. We'll see. So still before these 150 have not been used, I suppose there is no reason from political point of view, first of all, to call for a new wave of mobilization.
Yeah, let's observe the picture from the international side. If we take China, Russia, and US, so the latest news give us the information that China seeks to distance itself from Putin, but from the other hand, we could see that publicly Putin and Xi Jinping would like to show that they are even deeper in their relationships. So how do you estimate now the contacts between China and Russia, and how will it reflect the partnership between USA and China?
USA and China?
Yes.
Partnership?
Yeah.
Maybe confrontation possible or something.
But here they could make a partnership, I think, in context of the war in Ukraine. Maybe I'm mistaken.
I rather doubt that I'd like to be wrong, definitely, that China will start supplying us with military assistance and financial assistance, selling or giving us, presenting us vehicles, drones, etc. So, as they say, they are neutral, yeah? So, they help.
Are they neutral or not?
Well, let's put on political level, definitely they're not neutral. If we talk about diplomatical front, yes, United Nations, votings in Security Council, etc., definitely they help Russia to stand, and they support, they condemn the West, the USA, first of all, that they are guilty, that they are also guilty that this war started because just they were provocating all that NATO stuff, enlargement, etc., etc.
Publicly.
Publicly, yeah. But if we look from military point of view, if we look to analysis of intelligence analysis by US, they still do not support and do not sell, though Russia asked. Plenty of such news they were, and it is obvious because their lack of shells, for example, they have to buy it in North Korea, yeah.
For China, it's more important to have much more possible contacts between US with US.
For them, the most important is not to be sanctioned.
Yeah.
And it's the main reason why they still don't. And it was obvious the United States, Biden administration stated during the first weeks, months, that if China starts supplying military assistance, then China will be sanctioned. Definitely, China doesn't want. And if they look, to and fro, like just negative aspects, much more. So for them, everything is okay. So they benefit in economical sphere.
Yeah.
So as to finish, so military explain, diplomatical explain, so economical dimension. Also, they do not help Russia to escape sanctions. They didn't allow, even in spring, when Russia's reserves were frozen, by the West, a third of it, more than $300 billion. So the biggest part was of reserves in China, but in yuan. Yes, so they wanted to exchange it to dollars to help to pay debts, etc., mortgages. They denied. So actually, we should take into account that China is benefiting because, who are the, if not allies as well, supporters who are helping Russia just not to bankrupt. It's China and India who are buying oil and gas. So as we know, sanctions from the West, from the EU, finally started. Soon in February, it's going to be also new ones for petrol.
And so on,
and so on. So they may not sell to EU gas, which was the biggest market. They may not sell oil by sea. Also the bigger. So now
they lose
it's
50% in future.
And minus 50% of gas, export already. The results in the last year. So China, of course, and India benefiting because they know, okay, you cannot sell your oil to EU. Great, just give us more discount. And as you know, latest news, Russian oil, the price has dropped significantly. It is less than $40. For example, at the beginning of the war, the price was $110 per barrel. Now it's 38.
Yeah.
So these are the
extremely
consequences.
Low. Yeah.
Yeah. So even that, $60 per barrel, which is like the highest price for EU. Now it's much less already. So we see how it reflects, how it influences the prices. They are much less than that point.
Some experts tell that for China it's more important to have these connections with the US,
No,
but
definitely
not with Russia. Russia is just
definitely. If you look turnover, I'm not sure now, but if I'm not mistaken, just at least $600 billion China sells to US. Well, and if you look to Russia, it's less than 100. So as
it's very important for people to understand this moments.
The US is the biggest market for Chinese products, especially now when they canceled that strict obligations, restrictions to be correct. Connected with coronavirus. They are looking forward to restore its trade, production, etc. And the biggest market, as I mentioned, US. Second is EU. Russia is just
young brother
supplier of cheap gas and oil. That's it. This is the role. And of course, market for Chinese product but it's absolutely incomparable with the US market.
Yeah, so all these talks that, for example, China will be with Russia and about their like
They will
very strong partnership
they are looking forward to hug Russian
in their territory union. Yeah,
yeah, this bear to just to kill him in their hugs, and China has. Chinese leaders, people have a very good memory. Manchuria, history for China, just a few hundred years ago, 19th century, when Russia occupied a lot of Chinese territories, it's just like yesterday, taking into account their history. And they know how to wait. They are not in a hurry. And as I mentioned, why they are benefiting. The longer this war just is taking place, the longer it lasts, the easier. So the weaker Russia is becoming from all points of view. Financial dependence constantly increasing. From military point of view, Russia is declining. Yeah, its power. So, of course, they are looking forward. I'm sure we shall face referendums in Russian territories when China says, well, you see, you had to. People decided that they want to be with China, just as you did in Crimea. This precedent, I'm sure, will be repeated. Karma is a bitch, as you know, as we say. So they will face the consequences definitely. I'm sure it will be already after we deoccupy and return Crimea, but still. Not so much time, I guess. We have to wait.
Yeah, Maxim, we will see how it will go on. I really appreciate that you find time for our interview, and it was a fruitful talk. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So thank you to be with us, and I would like to remind you that today we have a guest, a political scientist, Maxim Yali. So see you in the next show, and don't forget to be subscribed to our YouTube channel.